everyone, to today's webinar, where we will be talking about RL and how we compare to VirusTotal. Let's go ahead and go to the, I'll quickly go over today's speaker. So myself, Amy Pace, I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at ReversingLabs. Been here about a year and a half now, focused on our threat intelligence and malware analysis side of the house. I will pass it over to Daniil now to introduce himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Amy. My name is Daniil. I'm one of the solutions architects here at ReversingLabs. Been here for about 2.5 years, and looking forward to talking with you all today. And I'll pass the baton over to Tim.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Wirespeed. We do 100% automated MDR. And it's my second webinar with ReversingLabs, so that means the first one must not have gone too horrible. You asked me to come back as a customer, so that's great. Thank you very much.
We are very glad to have you back. And yeah, you know, I'm going to go through, you know, some overview slides of ReversingLabs, but then, you know, we're going to have a discussion with Tim, because hearing from, you know, our customers and Tim, you know, recently did make the switch from VirusTotal to ReversingLabs. So we really wanted to bring him on, and, you know, and he can really talk about some of the key points of, you know, why he made that switch. All right, so let's go. Okay, so this is a little bit about ReversingLabs. We were founded, I think, 15, almost 16 years ago. And really, I like to say, you know, 15 mission-driven years of really focused on, you know, file threat intelligence and malware analysis. That, you know, that is what we do. We have one of the largest threat repositories with over 400 and let's see, what are we at now? 422 billion files. And that I do want to point this out, that repository is fully searchable. Like we don't limit how far you can search back. You can search back the whole, you know, 15 years until our inception. So we don't limit that in any way. And I say fully searchable to our customers. Our repository is not opened up to the public. So, you know, with, you know, again, VirusTotal, of course, everyone can see that, the good guys and the bad guys. So with ours, it is private, but, you know, if you're a customer, you have access to the full threat repository. We are trusted by over 60 leading cybersecurity vendors. I really do like to point that out, because I'm proud of that they leverage our data to help power their products. And then, you know, our customers really do, you know, kind of run the gamut across industries, you know, Fortune 500, Fortune 100, finance, critical infrastructure, high-tech software, retail, healthcare. We, you know, again, we have customers across the board there that trust our analysis and our threat intelligence for their, you know, for their infrastructure. And we have, you know, MSPs and MDRs that, again, leverage us as well for their end customers. And that, you know, Tim is one of those. There we go. So starting out, I'll spend a little bit of time on this, and we'll talk more about, you know, these line items, and really get Tim's insight as well onto this. And we'll be doing a demo as well, so we can kind of show you how we are able to do, you know, these larger files. As I started, you know, in the, you know, previous slide, our threat repository is over 400 billion files, and we are growing that, you know, by millions of files daily. I believe it's like 20 million new files daily. Daniil, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you're absolutely correct.
But we, you know, we're constantly growing that, and we, you know, and this is files that, you know, they come in and they go through our core analysis, and we'll talk about that. So, you know, we really are validating and vetting these, and with the end result being that you know, those threat indicators that you're not going to get from, you know, other vendors. And, you know, the reduction in false positives is really a key thing as well. We support over 4,800 file types. That is by far more than any other vendor, definitely more than VirusTotal. And, you know, I like to say, you know, nowadays, large complex file types are the new normal. So, I mean, we're now, you know, now we're seeing, you know, the LLMs, pickle files, you know, so VMDKs. So we're able to support those files that honestly another vendor's not going to be able to analyze those files, just to, not just to the size, but also, you know, how many layers are in that file. You know, some vendors say, okay, we can break down that file like 5 levels deep, 15 levels deep. We do that fully recursive file deconstruction, which I believe will be on the next slide, which we'll get to in a minute. With regard to max file size process, so we have 3 key products in our portfolio on our malware analysis threat intelligence side of the house. And so starting with our threat intelligence, you know, 2 gig is a max size, whereas VirusTotal is 650 meg. I have personally seen where, you know, I have seen feedback and experiences myself where, you know, it starts to really have performance issues. 500 meg, so 650 meg for VirusTotal it's probably being generous. But yeah, you know, if you look at user comments or use the free version of VirusTotal, you're going to see that, yeah, it might start having really performance issues, slow processing, if it's even able to analyze a file of that size. And so we actually scale up to 100 gig files with our Spectre Detect product. That is by far larger than any other vendor. With the product that we're going to be demoing today, what we call our Spectre Analyze product, we have a max file size of 10 gig. And so that, you know, again, that's extremely large, larger than any other vendor. And I talked about, you know, the need to be able to analyze these, you know, really these new file types, these complex file types that we're seeing more and more of. And so that, you know, that's at our core of being able to do that, to being able to analyze these complex files and objects. Our search back period, go ahead.
Sorry, really quickly here. I just wanted to plug a quick poll question. So, you know, as Amy's talking about all these the repository that we have, the data that we collect, the types of files we support, really curious, kind of, do people actually enrich in current file telemetry with external intelligence? Because that does help us understand a little better about the overall landscape. So sorry about that, Amy, please.
No, I knew we had poll questions, so I'm glad. I would have totally forgot about it. So thank you for prompting me, and please stop me along the way if you want to interject.
Absolutely.
So, okay, we'll let this poll go for a minute. Maybe not a full minute. And I believe, are you able to, Danielle, are you running this poll? Are you able to?
Yeah, it's actually a fairly even breakdown. I was expecting a little bit more on the yes side, but it is good to understand because look, when people are looking to get to enrich their data using telemetry to actually get more context and insights into everything that's happening in their environments, external telemetry is usually very important to use. And it's good to see that there's a good chunk of people using it, and it's also good to see that there's a lot of opportunity for people to implement it as part of their workflows.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And you know, and we'll talk about the, you know, the level of enrichment that we're able to provide. Tim can speak to that as well, and also in the demo, you'll be able to see the level of enrichment, you know, yourself as you know, we walk through our Spectre Analyze product. Can we go back to that slide a little bit? I wanted to hit on a couple of other things. So I touched on our file repository and the fact that it is fully searchable back to our, you know, to when we were founded. I bring this up because VirusTotal does, you know, they talk a lot about the size of their file repository, but they really kind of don't tell you about the fact that they do limit that if you're searching beyond that 365 days. So when we say ours is fully searchable, it is. It kind of comes down to whatever that, you know, how they said with that index beyond 365 days, which gives you a fraction of the results of their total file size repository. Retro hunting, you know, we can talk a little bit more about this maybe in the demo, but again, you know, our file size limit there is 2 gig, VirusTotal 64 meg. So that's quite a bit of difference there. I always like to highlight that our solution really is, it's private by default. Starting with the fact that our threat repository is not open to the public. You know, you have to be a customer to look at these files. But it's also, when you're doing your file analysis, it is private by default. It is not being shared with others by default, like VirusTotal, who again, they charge extra if you want that private file analysis. That is, that is at our core. And that's how we've built all of our solutions is based on this, this foundation of privacy. And when you're talking about, these enterprise customers, Fortune 500, Fortune 100, privacy is key. And that's, and we hear that from so many prospects coming to us. And so I'd like to highlight that. Also,
yeah, and if I can interject there real quick, based on the stories, and again, look, I'm biased, obviously, right? I work at ReversingLabs, but the amount of times we've had customers and prospects come to us and say, look, we were doing some research, we were doing some threat hunting, and all of a sudden we had our actual, our intellectual property out there in the wild.
Yeah, for anyone to see.
That's something you want to prepare for.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's and that sometimes it's inadvertent. You don't know what you're sharing, and I'm sure it wasn't the person who submitted that. I'm sure they definitely weren't out to share that information, but the fact that
exactly
submission is by default public, I mean, that is an issue. And all of our research, again, we're not a crowdsourced platform. This is all from our inception, our in-house research, our in-house threat research team, our trusted partners, and all the sources that we work with are highly vetted. The vendors that we work with. So we think that's a really big deal as well when it goes to the quality of the data that we're providing, the threat intelligence, and the level of false positives. So we like to highlight the fact that, hey, we've done our due diligence here, and we are working with our own in-house experts and trusted resources. And then support. That is another key thing that we hear a lot from prospects coming to us, is being able to talk to a live person when you need to. And so you're not going to get that with VirusTotal. I think Tim can probably speak to that too. So we like to highlight the fact that we're providing that. Our enterprise customers, you expect to be able to talk to a person when you need to talk to a person. And so we've got that. So we have our customer success teams, our support teams, and they work really hard. And so it's not like you're going to have to wait for someone to call you back or email you, or have to talk to a chatbot. All right. So I touched on this a bit about we talked about the fact that we can we support over 4,800 file types, 400 Packer formats, up to 100 gig file sizes with our Spectra Detect product. And we're able to do all that because of our core analysis engine. We call it a complex binary analysis engine. So what this is doing, it's doing that fully recursive file deconstruction. So we're not, we don't just go 5 layers deep, 15, 20 layers. We go to the, the base elements, to the atomic elements, to the last level, and we're able to break down that file, and we're able to do it very quickly, within seconds for, most files. And so we're able to expose, by doing this, a lot of additional metadata within our analysis that we then are able to provide to our customers. So we are providing a lot of indicators and metadata and enrichment that you're not going to see with other tools. All right.
Well, actually, sorry,
And
before we move on.
If you have a poll question.
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I appreciate it. So just one more poll question for the group here. Again, we're talking about file deconstruction. We're talking about enrichment. So, what is the most important part for the team here when classifying files in the workflow pipeline? It's one of those things that it's incredibly important to, there's obviously accuracy is important, speed is important, both might be important, breadth of supported formats, but I'm kind of curious what the number one is, if it's not all of them. And looks like so far 0% on speed. That's actually kind of impressive.
Yeah.
But fair enough. All the above wins. I'm not overly surprised there. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes. Again, thank you everyone for participating in these. These really is informative for us, and we can go back and talk to our our product managers and engineering teams, and this helps us a lot. All right. So, yes, so let's move on. Oh, yeah, the leading competitor, this is a VirusTotal takeout webinar. So, of course, the leading competitor is VirusTotal in this case. But, again, it's not just they do advertise a very large file repository, but again, it's not fully searchable. It is really limited on what what you're going to be able to search back through. And so, we like to say that, we're not only are we getting those millions of new files every day, we're harvesting these files, we're vetting these files, but we want to make all of this searchable for our customers. All right, next slide. And this is, just I want to highlight, again, I talked about the vetting of our threat intelligence. And so we do, we provide, of course, a REST API and direct integrations with, leading tools like, Splunk, Palo Alto, SOAR, multiple tips, EDRs. And so, this integration is, I like to say it, we have really this flexible API, but we also have the out of the box, the pre-built integrations to really power those security tools that, that these customers already have in place, and the workflows there, those automated workflows in the SOC. And Daniel, I know I think you were doing another poll question, so I just wanted to pause here.
Yep, no worries. The last poll questions are on Yara. So once we hit that slide,
All
we'll go
right.
down that road. Thank you. Oh, speak of the devil. Well,
And
actually, since we're here anyway.
Yeah, and so I wanted to make sure we call out the search and hunting capabilities of our product, because a lot of times, again, that's it. Like with VirusTotal, you pay extra for that private file analysis. A lot of these tools you pay extra for the really the advanced search and hunting capabilities. But all of this is built in to our product, and it's another thing, again, Daniil can speak more to, and we can look at during the demo.
Absolutely. And as part of this, again, quick poll, thank you. It's very quick. Do you currently leverage Yara, and in what way?
Yeah, and I'm always very interested into how many people leverage Yara.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Yara is a toolbox, right? You can use it in many different ways.
Yep.
But in this case, I'm kind of curious, especially in the audience here, in what way people are using it, and
Yep.
what are the restrictions around there as well.
Yeah,
So it looks
and
like,
it can have a learning curve. And so another thing we're trying to do, within our product is to really make it easier on the end user. We allow users to import their rules, or use their rules, use our rules, but be able to test those rules with a click of a button, and iterate quickly on those rules, and search across the local data store and our global threat repository.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Looks like no is the winner here. But the ones who are using it use it primarily for both, although it is a fairly even spattering across. So thank you all.
Yep. And next slide, please. I touched on this already, but highlighting it again, because this is something we hear all the time from our prospects, is having that level of privacy and privacy controls, but not just having that, but having it by default. It's not a bolt-on, it's not something you're paying extra for. All right. And then bottom line, 10 times a larger repository. Our file coverage, no other vendor is going to beat the fact that we can, we support over 4,800 file types, up to 100 gig file sizes. We are, with our complex binary analysis technology, we are able to really provide deep down insights, find that malware that's highly embedded. That it is going to, it could avoid other tools, and a lot of times it is evading, these sandbox analysis. Our analysis speed, like I said, seconds or even fractions of a seconds in some cases. The accuracy of our results. So we pride ourselves on, that increased accuracy and, less false positives. So, as a first line, defense, tier 1 triage person, you want to be confident that if you want that, is this good or bad, and you want to be confident in that. Not only does that again help everyone, but it's going to reduce escalations. And so we're trying to really filter out the noise and allow these SOC teams to make informed decisions. Complete privacy we talked about, and real customer support. You can talk to a live human being. All right, I think, yeah, so we are at the point where definitely want to bring in Tim into this conversation, who switched from VirusTotal to ReversingLabs. So can provide a lot of really good insight about that switch. So Tim, I will pass it to you, and we will make this very conversational.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Amy. From the last webinar I did with you guys, we kind of talked about the journey, how even I've heard ReversingLabs name. I've been doing cyber stuff for 25 years. So heard the name for probably not all 15 of those years you guys have been around, but a lot of it. Never put two and two together, what you guys did. And I had the same experience that a lot of other people have had recently, including an enterprise friend of mine just yesterday. Trying to renew with VirusTotal, trying to buy, and having trouble getting to Google salespeople, and them even just being willing to sell it. There's been a lot of weirdness with the Mandiant acquisition about rebundling it and trying to put in other things and calling it GTI, Google Threat Intelligence. And VirusTotal, those guys, the founders, did something cool and amazing. Thankful that they built it. They quickly became a Kleenex. Right, that's the only brand most people recognize. So as a result of that, and particularly, yeah, there's my little quote from before.
I like that quote.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't know of any other competitors, and so when I was struggling to get this up, and I'm like, I need file enrichment, I need analysis from third parties. I was going to go down the path of building my own little poor man's VirusTotal, because I was like, this kind of sucks. This is all journaled, by the way, in a blog that is in a mention.
Yeah, we'll link to it so everyone will be able to go out, and it's a really good read.
Yeah, so I went down, I just basically said, all right, what are all my options that are out there? And then I came across you guys, and I was just pleasantly surprised that I was aware of the brand, but didn't know that you guys were a direct competitor. Not only were you a direct competitor, you actually performed exceedingly well on every mark that we came up with. I mean, we nerded out. I had a giant spreadsheet and all these different things we were tracking and everything else. And for us, it's all about having good hit rates. No library of files is going to be perfect. But I can tell you, since we started doing this, and we've been live with ReversingLabs for, I don't know, 5-6 months or something like that now. The number of cases where we didn't get a hit because it wasn't in ReversingLabs, but the hash was in VT, is like maybe 2 or 3. I'm not tracking the other direction because we don't have a reason to, right? So I can't tell you how much better you guys are doing the other, but like 2 or 3 is very acceptable out of over months. So really like that, really like the wide variety of the file extension support. And the thing that I think probably should resonate for most of the buyers here is I like to look at anything I buy, whether it's a car, whether it's a piece of electronics, doesn't matter. I like to look at it as, is this a flagship product from the people who are making it? For example, if you want a sedan, you're probably not going to go to Ford. If you want a truck, you'll go to Ford. If you want a sedan, you'll probably go to Toyota and buy a Camry, because those are flagships. We kind of know that. A lot of people buy around that. You don't want to buy something that's not a flagship product for a company, because then it doesn't get the same attention, support, product development, love that you want it to do, right? So if you stop and look at and I don't know, I guess to say this, you guys can't really say this from your perspective, but I'll gladly do it. But if you look at Google's Google strategy, Google at the end of the day, and even after this Wiz acquisition, which is only going to make this even a more compelling reason to look hard at ReversingLabs instead of VT. At the end of the day, Google is all about selling cloud compute, right? They want to sell compute and storage. That's what they do. They need to sell security in order to get confidence, and because it's also, turns out, security takes up a lot of compute and storage. It's just another way to win market share. So for them, VT was just another way to pull you in. And so yes, we're serious about security, and they did it. But security is not the main thing; it's a secondary thing. And if you look at when Mandiant came in, VT went down a notch in terms of their attention. Now they just committed to buying the largest cybersecurity acquisition ever with Wiz. It's going to be focused on cloud. To me, that puts VT is at least 4 steps down in terms of like prioritization, where it's going to go. And if you've ever worked with anybody, if you know a little bit about how the Google team works, I've never worked at Google, but I know people that have, and they kind of explain to me like this. So take with a grain of salt, it could be wrong. But I've had a couple people say it, so I think this is probably true. Product managers generally get approval to build a product or maintain a product or add features to a product. They get a budget assigned to it. That doesn't mean it gets automatically funded with people. They then, because it's a meritocracy in a relatively flat organization, have to go out to all the developers and recruit them, evangelize them, and say, come work on my product. It's going to be amazing. And these are Google engineers, right? You know, we've known for 20 something years, it's like destination spot for software developers. They've always wanted to do that. So when they get there and they have this meritocracy, which very much appeals to them, they can choose to go work on these features, or they can choose to go somewhere else. So what I've seen in other products that I've worked with in past roles is if the engineers aren't excited about the role, it doesn't get, features don't get done. The roadmap just goes slow and everything else. So you got to stop and think of all the things that Google engineering is going to want to work on. It's probably not going to be VT. Like, they're not really innovating. They haven't really done anything crazy there, and their prices are going anywhere but down. Like, they're going up quite a bit. We were very pleasantly surprised with the VirusTotal pricing. It aligns very well with us and helped us, you know, very much to grow.
Yeah, and
So,
we just interject. We definitely have heard from prospects coming over from VT of how now with that, you know, the you know, Google, Mandy, and all that how much that they are now coming back and asking for, like, you know, the price of
yes.
their renewal.
Yes, because what they're doing is they're bundling in all the Mandiant threat intelligence.
Yep.
So you're like, hey, I just want to do VirusTotal. I just want to do file enrichment. And they're like, great, I'm going to bundle it over here. You're also going to get attack surface management that you didn't ask for. You're going to get PDF threat reports that you didn't ask for. You might read and go, that's kind of cool, but are they actionable? I don't know. And then you're going to get, and they just start adding on all these things. You're like, but I just wanted an API key. That's all I wanted. I wanted an API key. I wanted to comply with license, and that's it. And they're like, no. And then I've also, you know, like the joke about, you guys were talking about being able to talk to a person. Good luck even talking to a salesperson these days. It's really, really hard. It took me a few months just to get it, somebody, and that's with friends and back channeling it. So yeah, I'm glad to see the innovation, glad to see the competition in the space. I've one more little thing I've also heard from some people that were, I would just say, let's close and inside of Google. Their number of 5 billion, they tend to count files multiple times. So if they see a file here, it's one record. If they see that same hash, that same file somewhere else, it's another +1. Yes. So it's probably not actually 5 billion files. So that's the other fun little secret about this. So yeah, I'm a fan. I'm glad came across you guys. Again, I get paid nothing for this. I'm actually paying them to be here apparently. So if you guys have questions, hit me up or check out the blog at the end of the thing. And read it's a really good way to kind of see it. So yeah,
and we will definitely provide links to that, because that you know, report and you know, testing the different vendors, that's I found that very interesting. So,
and I wrote it, frankly, guys, because it didn't exist and I needed it, and it's like, somebody else is gonna need this. I'm not the only one, so we're doing the work, might as well share it.
Yeah, I think so I definitely recommend everyone checking that out. All right. So I know, what are we at? I wanted to make sure we have time for a demo here. So, Daniil, if you want to start the demo, we can do that. And then we can, again, you know, we'll have more, hopefully discussion time, Q&A at the end, where we can answer questions.
Perfect.
And if questions come in during the demo, we'll try to highlight those and as well. So I will kick it over to you.
All right. Hopefully everyone can see my screen and only my analyze instance here.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
We do see two pictures of you, though.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Well, that's a start. Let's see if I can figure out what's going on here. Give me 1 second. Let's try this one more time. This time with fewer pictures of me, hopefully.
All right, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Beautiful. So as we've talked about so far, today we'll be going through our Spectra Analyze instance. I know, Sivaram, you asked about the industry space we play in. I did answer partially in the text, but Analyze covers the malware analysis threat hunting side of the equation. That's what I'll be focusing on primarily today. We do have a number of other platforms. The other one is Spectra Assure. That's the one where we're looking at third-party risk management, as well as software quality, software supply chain security kind of policies. So that's a completely different segment, but same engine underneath.
Yeah, and
a
that's the
little bit
point.
outside
It
the
is,
scope.
yeah, it does. Our portfolio is all powered by the same core engine backed by, our threat intelligence repositories. So, yeah, so I keep going, Daniil. This is like you said, our Spectre Analyze product here.
Absolutely. And I don't see questions. So if they come in and there's anything that you'd like me to show or dive deeper into, please interrupt me. I can talk for hours, and I don't think anyone here wants that. So when it comes to the Spectre Analyze platform, out of the gate, I just want to, kind of tongue in cheek, show the fact that, hey, we have a ton of samples, a ton of data that are beyond what VirusTotal is able to do. In this case, all I'm doing is I'm searching our internal database for files that are malicious, ones that I can download, so they're available to me to look at, and are 650 megs and above. And it looks like in the last month, we've had a little under 500 different samples. But let's say, in this case, this just shows a sample set, and it ranges across the gamut. But let's say, for example, we want to go ahead and look at ones that are ISOs.
And I know you're looking at 650 above because that's, kind of what the file size max that VirusTotal talks about. Yeah, like I said, yes, we can go up to 10 gig files. And so I'm glad you're pointing out these larger files here.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I wanted to add as well. And when you were talking about the difference in file sizes and the fact that VirusTotal struggles above 500 megabytes,
Yeah.
That's an area that we actually, when we say that we have limits of 10 gigs, 100 gigs, those are fully tested limits. Those are ones that we've done internally. We've actually had customers test those limits. I've been part of some of those conversations, and we have vetted that specific capability through and through. So this isn't a paper limit. It's not a theoretical architectural limit. It's something that actually has been vetted by our internal teams, and we can deconstruct files that are very complex, very large, and ones that you may not want to necessarily deconstruct in your own end before vetting it through a solution like ours. So when we're looking at all these different files, right? In this case, I'm just paring down into ISO files. Again, this is an area that VirusTotal would have a lot of difficulty in. All of these are above 650 megs, except for this one here, because we're talking about bits versus bytes. I think it's a fairly straightforward thing there. But what we're looking at specifically here is, I'll be diving into this Office 2010 Pro ISO file. And as we're going into this, you'll notice that there's a number of different threat names here, a number of different malware families. Keep in mind that when we're scanning across these different file types and packages, we covered a whole bevy of the threat landscape when it comes to malware. So this file in particular, right, this large ISO file, out of the gate, it's about 735 megabytes, give or take. But really, the first thing we want to show, right as you click into the actual file itself, is what we believe it to be, right? Is it something that's benign? Is it something that's malicious? Is it suspicious? Somewhere in between. This one's an easy example, and obviously for demo purposes, I picked an easy example. It's a risk score of 10. It's an info stealer. We know it's bad. It's got a ton of hits on AV scanners. It's got some Yara matches here. But all of this is to give you a lay of the land right out of the gate. And as we're going into and we're deconstructing these files, we're looking into more details. This is really where we can start seeing the power of having a much larger threshold for file size versus what VirusTotal is able to do. And we can see a lot of details here out of the gate too. So, if there's any tags that we can see here, any cryptographic capabilities, anything around the actual malware family itself, we'll call it out. This one's a very simple info stealer, YMSG, and we'll see if there's any kind of malware family prevalence. This is important to understand if there's any kind of campaign happening across the board. This one in particular, again, it's a Office 2010 Pro ISO file, probably opportunistic, not necessarily targeted. And as we'll see in the network strings, and I think that was one of the questions I was asked, it came in from some random archive site that archive.org subsite that we were able to see information on. And as we're going into this, as I'm going through the details, I do want to keep calling attention to the fact that there's a wide bevy of different data points that we can connect directly into this individual file here. So for example, this one, we're looking at a little over 91,000 extracted files. They can subdivide into 46,000 unique individual extracted files, one parent file, a bunch of network references. But really, our goal is to help up-level the priority of the ones that are most important. And here we can actually see where this file came from. The source itself is coming in from the archive.org subsite here, this Office 2010 Pro ISO file. And we're using the reputation data set to enrich this information to make sure that, hey, this is something that's malicious, and further provide telemetry around why we believe it's being malicious here. Now, even further down the road, this one's a little bit, again, like I said, a little bit of a cheat. I have a sensitive data Yara rule, which is why we have so many matches. But we'll go into a more interesting one further down the road in the actual demo here. But we can call out all this information right out of the gate in the initial screen. Now, as we see this, again, front and center, we have all this data. Let's go ahead and actually dive a little bit deeper into how we caught this data set. And so here we can see, okay, well, this is one file here that's given us the specific classification. And those 91,000 extracted files, they all divide into those different categories. Now, again, there's a lot of data, and I'll show you kind of how to pair through that in a couple seconds here. But the goal here is to provide context in order to drive the final decision internally for the organizations here on how to use this data and how to actually either allow this internally or to prohibit it from being disseminated across your internal environment. In this case, it's a Trojan, so sorry, it's an info stealer, so it's pretty cut and dry from how we do it. But as we're scrolling down here, all of these just point to, again, those connecting points, context and metadata we provide in addition to the overall classification. And all of these help exactly what typical teams will need when it comes to providing file analysis results. Now, all of this information is good, but let's say I want to pare down. I want to focus on exactly the one malicious file inside of this 740 meg ISO file. Well, it's extremely easy. All we have to do is go to extracted files. And my apologies, I am colorblind, but I believe it's this one top part on the very top here.
Yes.
And as we're thank you. And as we're clicking on this, it's very simple to see, if you're not colorblind, the fact that all the folders are not red. The top one is red, so we know we can click on that. And hey, oh, that's the actual file, the activator itself, and it kind of tracks. An activator would have InfoStealer in it. A lot of times, these cracked copies of software will have some kind of either crypto miner, info stealer, even a Trojan, sometimes a backdoor. So it really depends on the individuals creating the specific ISO file here. But as we go into it, we can see again all that same bevy of information. And again, it's at our fingertips of, okay, well, there's still more extracted files here. Great. We have some MITRE attack hits. Fantastic. But even more so, when we actually look at the, for example, the behaviors, we can see all of these different behaviors being pulled out from functions, from symbols, from strings that translate into English readable format on exactly what this file is able to do.
And
So
I'm glad you called that out, that human readable, like explainable threat intelligence, that, it does make this very easy to understand.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think it's incredibly important because when you're talking about behaviors, right? And back when I used to work in threat intelligence, it was a lot more. It was easy to use VirusTotal to enrich data, right? It's difficult to extract meaningful behavior without having it be dynamically detonated. All of these indicators, we call them indicators, but they're behaviors. All of these are statically extracted. So when we're looking through the entirety of the file, that entire 740 meg ISO, we're carving out strings, we're pulling out relevant information, and we're seeing everything that's related to information that we can use. So we don't stop until we recursively unpack everything. And so that's where, again, those large file sizes, I cannot stress enough how impressive that is, again, from a biased perspective, but from an engineering perspective, you're talking about deconstructing an insane amount of data and pulling out relevant details from it, which is something that is incredibly helpful, especially when you start moving into the realm of things like machine learning models, things like file system entities like VMDKs, OVAs. All of these are monolithic large files. Sure, you can deconstruct them yourself. Sure, you can carve out strings on your own, but why do that when you have something that's available to help you out with it on a more automated basis?
Yeah, and the speed is a huge benefit of leveraging us for that.
Exactly. Now, one thing that was I think was asked in the chat earlier on, the decomposed artifacts. So those are the extracted files I was talking about, but I also wanted to point out, and I'll go into this in a little more detail on the Yara side. We also pull out things like structure, hex, entropy levels. We can also call down the disassembly instructions. So when I say we go deep into it, we go really deep into it. And this is important again when we're talking about Yara matches against strings. This is exactly what we're using to compare and contrast and make sure that that match actually happens. All right. I think I've covered the large size files indefinitely at this point, and I do want to make sure we have time for questions. So I'm going to cover a few more examples, but it's ones that I think are going to be, well, for lack of a better term, kind of cool, but also ones that show really well. So this is the WannaCry ransomware. We're all familiar with it, unfortunately. And again, you can see the Yara matches here. Great, we have this information, but let's say I don't believe it. Let's say I don't believe this is WannaCry. I want to go a little bit deeper and understand exactly what's happening when this actually gets executed. And sure, you could spin it off into a dynamic sandbox. You can detonate it. You can automatically pull out relevant artifacts. But let's say, for example, it's meant to look for specifically elements of human interaction. We have a new feature that just came out recently around interactive sandbox. So all we have to do when we're going through interactive sandbox, and this is something that again is pretty cool. When we're actually pulling this into our sandbox and detonation environment, we provide a fully comprehensive and fully fledged window that users can leverage and play around with the malware. Use it to your heart's content, see how it works, see what happens, and it'll automatically launch the file itself. And once it's going through, we're going to start seeing a massive uptick in files being encrypted, these temporary folders being created. Oh, there's an INI file that just came up. So we can see the actual execution of this application and of the software directly within this screen here. There's one more example that I wanted to pull up. I think it was this one. Let me go back into dynamic analysis. There we go. Now let's go ahead and reanalyze real quick. And so all of this is, again, providing a standpoint where you can go in and you can play around with the actual file and see exactly what needs to be done. And this is, again, as you saw me doing this live, essentially, it just spins up the session. You can work with it. You can play around with it. And then all of that information, once the session is done, all of it will then be used to enrich our existing static analysis. So let's say, for example, we go back to that ISO file that we talked about earlier on. Great, we have that ISO file, fantastic. But let's say we want to see what happens if we just run the key activator that we saw within the ISO file. Great, we can do that without even having to load the entire ISO file into the actual instance here. We can go in, we can run it within the system. It's been a little slow because I'm beating it up right now, so apologies there. But we can see that run directly within an interactive sandbox. So you can use that data point to then actually extract as much relevant information as you need in order to run through with the instance here. In the interest of time, I'm going to let this one spin up on the side.
And as you mentioned, we've always had this built-in sandbox. We are introducing this interactivity capability, which we're very excited about, and that's what you're highlighting. So I'm glad you were able to introduce that to the audience here.
Yeah, it's again, it's really cool, and it's one of those differentiators. We have all this information that we're gathering already. Now we're enriching it with even more capabilities, and it's going to be a really cool feature. Last thing, Yara rules. I talked about a little bit of Yara rules already. I have a couple that I spun up here a little while ago, but we have a lot of capabilities to run Yara rules and Yara hunts against local infrastructure, against our cloud, and a retroactive lookup. When I say retroactive lookup, we can look back 90 days and we can see all the samples that might match a Yara rule. So when we're talking about threat research, threat hunting, malware research, great. The incident response side, you're tracking files coming in, you're making sure that whatever you have is coming in as clean, doesn't match your Yara, any kind of malware families that might be targeting your specific vertical. But now what you can do is if you find a targeted campaign against your
And I
environment,
think, can we switch back to the demo screen? It got switched over to a different slide here.
oh,
Yeah, so we're not seeing your demo screen.
what is showing right now? Apologies.
It's
No,
the
Amy, we are. We're good.
oh, okay.
It's live. We're
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
No, you're totally fine. Appreciate calling it out. Yeah, so as I was saying, when it comes to the retro hunts, if you find a sample or if there's a targeted campaign, you want to get more samples to test the veracity of your Yara rules, great. Now you have that capability directly in here. And so this one in particular, when I'm going into this, I can actually see all the different hits that I have here. And let's say, again, Meterpreter is super ubiquitous, not necessarily malicious in its existence, but malicious in its usage across different bases. But let's say I want to pull down a sample. I want to make sure that what we're seeing is comparable to the Yara match here. Well, great. We pulled down the sample. Again, interest of time, kind of skipped a little bit ahead here. And we're going to go back to that preview visualization screen here. And now, as part of the hex structure, we can actually select this rule set and we can see exactly where it matches within the hex. And so when you're using Yara, when you're testing that ability of Yara to match up against the samples that you're leveraging, you can actually see all the different results for the string matches and where they sit within the file itself. And this is huge when it comes to, again, operationalizing Yara. And one of those areas that we talked about a little while ago, actually, is when it comes to those Yara matches and Yara hunts, VirusTotal is very, very limited in the amounts that you can do. I believe the actual number is something like two hunts two simultaneous hunts, which obviously is not enough if you're doing any kind of significant or serious threat hunting.
And I mean, to do more, of course, you're going to pay extra with VirusTotal.
Exactly. Perfect. Well, I think that's it for the demo side. Hopefully, and again, I don't see the questions, apologies, but hopefully that was useful to everyone here. I think at this point, we're going to want to open up to Q&A.
Yeah, and thank you so much. Yeah, this demo, I've said it before, I love watching your demos, so very much appreciated.
Sure.
Yeah, let's definitely open it up for Q&A. I also wanted to, Tim, kind of go back to you on that. Are there particular file types that you work with that I guess VirusTotal was not able to analyze or did not do a good job analyzing?
I mean, obviously the more dynamic and I would say short-lived documents, like so file types, things like office documents, things like that, that might be kind of, I don't want to say polymorphic, but ones where they spin up a generated quantity of slightly variable files where each one is going to have a slightly different hash because there's something different about the bytes in each one. Those types of things tend to be problematic. It was really important to me to have something that used Mac and Linux as well, which you guys support. I still think as an industry, we got a long way to go to get all the Mac binaries in there because we got developers that go do homebrew and pull something down, and then EDRs like to freak out about it. But as a general rule, I think no, the variety. I'll put it this way: I haven't hit your limit on your file extension types. I'm nowhere close to hitting it. I don't think there's been a single place. I mean, where we see it right now is just the file is just not the hash isn't known if it's something that's obscure or custom to the company. But you guys have API flows for sending that data over and letting it get analyzed. So that's really not not a limitation on your side. Let's put it that way.
All right, good to hear.
Yep.
I think we have a question. Daniil, I'll throw that question to you.
Sure.
In the chat. Are you able to see that?
There's similar functionality as VT grep. Quick search for hex, string content, and recent files without creating a full Yara rule. As of right now, the answer to that is no. Yara is still our main go-to strategy when it comes to specific matches and strings. I cannot speak to the future though. I'll let our product management team kind of address that one. But I don't know if there's any future plans there.
Yep. But this is the kind of information we like to present to our product team. And I know, speaking of that, I know Tim, that you've I think you've been able to talk with the product team with regard to, some of the things, enhancements like you might want to see. And so, again, I want to go back to the fact that, that we like to hear from our customers. We want to talk in person with our customers because yes, that helps us drive our roadmap. So, I mean, what has your experience been like there with regard to support and engineering and giving your feedback?
Well, like they put 3 product managers on the call with me, so that was more than I was expecting. So that was good. Might have something to do with that blog right there, um, but yeah, no, I think the things I said were not crazy ideas that they had not already thought of. They were all things that are on the roadmap. And like any company, you have more things you want to build in your backlog than you have engineering time to go do.
Yeah.
It's always a prioritization process. And so if there are things in there that you guys want, one of the things that that I've requested is the ability to upload basically an unlimited amount of files if I'm willing to share it amongst all ReversingLabs customers, because it makes the library better, and that generally seems very agreeable. The API doesn't do that technically, but they came up with workarounds for me. So there's things like that might, if that's something that is, I don't know. I don't want to speak too much for your product team, but they are they've been pleasant. Let's put it that way. Very, very pleasant.
Very good.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. Are you, I mean, just, with regard to your use cases, I mean, do you see any new use cases coming that you would be leveraging ReversingLabs for now that?
I mean, yes, nothing that you didn't already talk about, and that has to do with our maturity as a startup, and that has nothing to do with your product or your services at all. But it's in general, one of the things I found interesting, Danielle, is that when like no one picks speed. Speed matters to us. I mean, it's in our name. It's Wirespeed. We have to have answers fast, and it's something that's talked about in that blog. We went and hit up a bunch of different solutions, and the amount of enrichment data we get back from just sending one hash to your API in let's call it, I don't know, 100 to 150 milliseconds is unreal. It is really performant. I have not seen it drop. I can't think of a single time where we've been plagued with 404s, timeouts, throttling, anything remotely like that. API uptime is really, really important to us. It's just been rock solid from that perspective. So I don't know, either we have been really lucky, or you guys are just amazing, or somewhere in between, right? Like,
Or
I
both.
think you guys are amazing. Yeah, or both. Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, I think that is something that I don't know if initially highlighted here, but that processing pipeline on our backend was kind of built for handling not just large files, but high volumes of files at those speeds, and so, we've got customers, analyzing millions of files a day. And so, it really, this is real world tested, as Daniil was saying.
Yeah, we actually have a customer that's in the 120 million hash lookups a day, and they themselves noted that it's around 100 milliseconds without any.
It's unreal. It's really performant. I'm really impressed. It actually, and so Severum asked a good question in the comments about the different hashes. That was actually a contending thing for us, and it was really important to us because there were certain EDRs kicking on Sentinel-1 that doesn't turn on SHA-256 by default. And if you bought it through a service partner, like, you have to go ask your service partner to turn it on. You can't turn it on, and then it becomes a religious debate. You have to explain to them why it's important to turn. Like, I didn't want to deal with any of that nonsense. So the fact that you guys supported literally every single type was really important to me. And when we went down that, there's another vendor I won't mention that's in that list that had really good data for Windows only, not for the other Mac and Linux. But I was impressed with what they had, honestly. But the problem was they didn't have all the hash. They didn't have SHA-1. They went straight from MD5 to SHA-256, completely skipped SHA-1. So it meant all my Sentinel-1 customers I couldn't enrich, right? It was this major pain in the butt. So I asked them, can you go and update it? And I got kind of this like talking around in circles kind of answers, like, no, we can't. And what I deduced from this, being an engineer, they don't have the files. Guys, this is super important. If your provider throws away the data because it's expensive to store, I mean, that's like, storage is cheap, really. Then they can't go back and go, okay, MD5's dead, I'm going to SHA-1. SHA-1's dead, I'm going to SHA-256, and now we're going to whatever. We're going to, some new hash algorithm in a year, 2, 3, 5. Because you have the files, you guys can go generate that. That's just a compute batch process for you. Whereas the other vendor, sorry, threw away the data, can't ever do it. So guess what? The data set is worthless. So that, another thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and that again, I touched on at the very beginning, having the fact that, we do those files, going back, 15, 16 years, accessible to our customers. I mean, that's a big deal.
Mhm.
Daniel, do you see any other questions in the chat?
I'll just tell you this, Raymond. Good question. The API gives you back all the data you would expect a reverse engineer, hence the name of the company, right? Would do with, I don't know, if I gave a manual reverse engineer an hour to go break a file, I get that back 100 milliseconds. I see every DLL, every namespace import, frankly, we get more data back than we want. And it's just there. It's pretty impressive. Whether or not, I think I remember Impash being in the API, didn't
Impash is in there. Yep.
Yeah. But I don't personally, we don't pivot off that today. But there's so much data that comes back. It's frankly, it's impressive and overwhelming at scale. It's really neat.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. And to answer your last question, ability to see where the samples on the internet, if we have it in our source information, if we have it in our metadata, we'll expose that. And actually, you can actually pivot from file to network reference to any payloads in a network reference to any other files that may have that network reference in it. So there's a couple of pivot points there as well.
Yeah, and we didn't go too deep into the relational graph and the pivot points, but there's a lot you can do there.
Yeah, I could demo for hours, like I said.
No, I know.
There's a lot
And
of
we're
data.
actually expanding on that as well. So that's a good point. I know we're coming up on time here. So I wanted just to highlight research. This is the report that you did, right, Tim?
Yeah.
Where you meticulously went through a lot of different vendors. And I know that took time.
Well, we had to do it. I mean, we had to do it because we were at an impasse and couldn't transact with VT, and so it's like, okay, we're going to go down this path. So my pain is your step up.
Our
That's
game.
why we're here.
And so no, we were excited to be the winner of that. And I mean, you did this on your own, and so I think this is great. So I definitely will provide again these slides out to everyone so you can go read that. And then so let's I think we have a wrap up. So we have some upcoming webinars on our if you go to reversinglabs.com and check out our webinar page, our content library. A lot of really good webinars we have on demand, as well as these upcoming webinars. So we definitely would recommend checking those out. And then again, I think we had the additional slide we had, I think it was a little bit earlier, was the customer study we did with Tim. And so, and we have other case studies as well that you can check out. But really do appreciate everyone's time here. Thank you so much, Tim, for joining us on this. I mean, having real customer feedback is so awesome. And so having you join us, talk about your experience, definitely was helpful. I hope everyone got a lot out of that. I know I did. And Daniil, as always, your demos are the best. And if anyone on the webinar, feel free to reach out. Again, feedback, any questions we did not get to, feel free to reach out. And if you want a demo from Daniil, we can do that, and we can get into. I'm putting you out there, Daniil.
I appreciate that.
And we can go deeper into any feature that really you want to see on our product site. We only have a certain amount of time on this, so thanks everyone again for your time, and have a great day.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.